A lonely man walks into a bookstore and finds a young woman wearing a ring identical to the one worn by the love of his life. Intrigued, he approaches her, and upon discovering the young woman's past, he is confronted with a truth he never imagined. But when he finally understands the bond that unites them, he realizes that Carlos walked slowly through the streets of his neighborhood, letting the soft noise of traffic mix with his thoughts. The bookstore on the corner had always been his refuge, the place where, even when he was surrounded by people, he felt alone, at peace. He walked through the worn wooden door, and the soft sound of a bell announced his arrival. Without looking at anyone in particular, he headed toward the section of old books. Those that, like him, seemed to have stories already told and scars hidden between their pages. As he ran his fingers over the covers of the books, a golden ring caught his eye. In one corner of the aisle, a young saleswoman was carefully arranging the books. She wore a ring on her left hand, a simple yet unmistakable design. Carlos felt his heart beat faster. There was something disturbingly familiar about that ring. Memories flooded through his mind with an intensity he hadn't expected. For a moment, he almost felt time go backwards, returning him to a past he thought was buried. Trying not to look too curious, Carlos moved a little closer, pretending to search for a book on the shelf. The young woman, oblivious to his observation, smiled as she arranged the books. Her expression was calm, and there was a serenity in it that reminded Carlos of something, or someone, he had long since lost. Unable to help himself, his eyes returned to the ring, and suddenly images of another time invaded him. Shared laughter, whispered promises, and a wordless farewell. That ring had belonged to someone very special. How was it possible that he was seeing it there, on the hand of a stranger? Pain crept into his chest, and although he tried to hide it, nostalgia took hold of him. He took a step back, feeling a mixture of surprise and melancholy. He knew he should leave, but his feet seemed anchored to the ground. Finally, the young woman noticed him. She looked at him curiously, but still smiling. Carlos lowered his gaze, pretending to be interested in the book he had picked up at random. However, he felt the need to know more, to discover why this woman was wearing the ring from his past. Something inside him whispered that this was not a simple encounter in a random bookstore, that perhaps in the midst of all the lonely days he had lived, this moment brought with it answers he had not even sought. With one last glance at the ring, Carlos decided he couldn't leave without getting some explanation. Carlos took a deep breath, gathering the courage to approach the young woman. It was not something he did often. His life was solitary, and casual conversations had become rare over the years. However, the ring on his left hand was a silent invitation that he could not ignore. He walked with soft steps, as if he were afraid of breaking the fragile tranquility that filled the bookstore. Translated from Spanish to English, www.onlinedoctranslator.com. "Sorry to interrupt," he said in a voice more unsure than he would have liked. "I was wondering, that ring you're wearing, does it have any special meaning?" The young woman looked at him with some surprise, but she didn't stop smiling. Her eyes reflected a sincere kindness that relaxed Carlos a little. "Oh, this ring," he replied, slightly lifting his hand to show it. He looked at the ring for a few seconds before continuing. "It was my mother's. I've worn it ever since she passed away. It's the only thing I have from her, apart from some memories." Carlos felt a pang of emotion in his chest. The mention of the young woman's mother plunged him into a whirlwind of thoughts. Was it possible? He couldn't help but wonder if that ring really belonged to the person he had loved, the one who had left an indelible mark on his life. He tried to control his expression so as not to show the agitation he felt, afraid of frightening the young woman with his intensity. "I'm sorry for your loss," he replied, trying to sound neutral. "How long ago did it happen?" Anna nodded slowly without losing her kind smile, although her eyes showed a glint of melancholy. "A few years ago. My mother was my only family, so, well, I guess we manage as best we can when we lose someone important, right?" Carlos nodded silently, unable to find the words to respond. He knew what it was like to live with the weight of an absence, with the feeling that something essential was missing. But this young woman seemed to carry it with a serenity that he had never achieved. Her hands trembled slightly, and he tried to control himself, breathing deeply. Forgive me if I am indiscreet, but did your mother ever talk to you about the ring? He asked, making sure his voice sounded casual. Anna shook her head, looking at the ring again. No, not really. I just remember that she always wore it, as if it were a part of her. When I was a child, I once asked her if it had a special meaning, but she just smiled at me and said that one day I would understand. At the time, I didn't understand her words, but now I think she meant that she wanted me to carry it with me, as a reminder of her. Carlos felt a lump in his throat. Every word Anna said made the image of Clara, his lost love, become clearer in his mind. Could it be possible that this young woman was connected to his past in such a deep way? He was torn between his emotions and his reason. He didn't want to force the issue or scare her, but he needed to know more. With effort, he hid his agitation behind a faint smile. It's a beautiful legacy, he said finally, unable to stop looking at the ring. Carlos left the bookstore that afternoon with his heart full of unanswered questions. With every step he took, the echo of Anna's words resonated in his mind. The idea that Anna's mother could be his former love, Clara, disconcerted him. However, the mere possibility that she was connected to this young woman filled him with an unexpected emotion, a mixture of hope and nostalgia. Determined to clear up his doubts, Carlos began to visit the bookstore more frequently. On each visit, he exchanged a few words with Anna, seeking, without being too obvious, to obtain more details about her life. However, he did not dare to ask directly about his mother. He was afraid of hurting her, or worse, confirming a truth that he was not prepared to face. During one of his visits, Anna, with the naturalness of someone who does not keep secrets, told him that she had been living alone since her mother's death. Those words struck a chord in Carlos's soul, as they confirmed that Anna had never met her father. This further fueled his suspicions, and he began to think about coincidences: the ring, the absence of a father, and the mystery surrounding his mother's past. My mother was a private woman, Anne once told me, while organizing a pile of books. She never talked much about her life before I was born. Sometimes I feel like there were things she preferred to keep to herself, and I respect that. Carlos tried to remain calm, even though each new detail brought him closer to a painful certainty. He tried hard not to betray his interest, not to let the whirlwind of emotions that consumed him show. He knew he couldn't rush things. The last thing he wanted was to break the young woman's peace. But in the solitude of his apartment, surrounded by dusty memories and the echo of his thoughts, Carlos reviewed every conversation, every word Anna had said. There were things that coincided too well to be mere coincidences. Nevertheless, fear held him back. What if he was wrong? What if, in his need to close the wounds of the past, he was seeing signs where there were none? With each passing day, Anna's presence became more important in his life. The possibility that she was Clara's daughter kept him on edge, but he wasn't ready to share his suspicions. He felt that doing so might hurt Anna, or even worse, destroy the special connection he was building with her. Carlos was at a crossroads. He needed answers, but his intuition told him to wait. He knew that somehow time would reveal what he was looking for. That night, Carlos let himself be enveloped by the memories he had kept hidden for so many years. Clara's image resurfaced in his mind with painful clarity, bringing with it a mixture of love and nostalgia that he had not felt in a long time. He remembered the sparkle in her eyes, her soft laugh, and the way her presence filled any place. They had shared intense moments, those that leave indelible marks on the soul. It was impossible to forget how they had met, in a bookstore similar to the one he now frequented. Clara had appeared in his life at a time when he was looking for nothing, and yet she had changed everything. She became the center of his world, and together they had dreamed of a future that seemed indestructible. However, from one day to the next, Clara had vanished without a trace, taking with her all the promises they had shared. Carlos relived that absence every day, but over time he had learned to silence the pain, to lock it away in a dark corner of his memory. And now, so many years later, Anna's presence in his life forced him to confront everything he had tried to forget. The possibility that Clara had a daughter he didn't know about, filled him with unanswered questions. He wondered what had really happened. Why had Clara left without saying anything? What had forced her to disappear without an explanation? These questions tormented him, and now, faced with the possibility of finding answers, Carlos was afraid of discovering a truth that could be more painful than he imagined. Each memory brought with it a wave of emotions that he could barely control. He knew it was impossible to return to the past, but Anna's presence made him feel that, perhaps, there was still something he could redeem from that unfinished story. He wondered if he could find peace, if solving that mystery would finally allow him to close a chapter that he had left open for so long. He looked at an old box of photographs stored in his closet. There were the vestiges of his life with Clara, images of happy days that now seemed to belong to someone else. However, he didn't dare open it. He wasn't ready to relive all that was left behind. As the night progressed, Carlos realized that Anna had not only brought with her the memory of Clara, but also an unexpected possibility, that of understanding her past and perhaps closing a wound that had never completely healed. But he didn't know if he was ready to face what fate had in store for him. Carlos arrived at the bookstore with his heart racing, determined to find some answers, although his own doubts kept him on edge. This time, the impulse was stronger than his fear. Anna greeted him with the same serene smile, although her eyes reflected a slight curiosity about the constant visits of that man who little by little had become a regular presence. As they walked through the aisles, Carlos tried to make light conversation, but his desire to know more about Clara, Anna's mother, made him lose his concentration. He stopped in front of a shelf, taking a deep breath to calm himself. He knew he needed to approach the subject delicately. He didn't want Anna to suspect his intentions, but he couldn't keep avoiding the questions that tormented him. "You know," he began in a casual voice, trying to hide his uneasiness, "I've always been intrigued by how some people can keep secrets so well kept. Sometimes I feel like every person has a hidden story." Anna looked at him curiously, as if trying to guess the purpose of his words. "It's true. My mother, for example, was quite reserved. She never told me much about her life before I was born. I think she always wanted to protect me from something she preferred to forget." Carlos felt a knot in his stomach. Every word Anna said brought him closer to Clara's image. He wanted to ask directly, but the fear of the answer held him back. However, he found the courage to ask a more specific question. "Did he ever tell you anything about the people he knew in his youth?" he asked, trying to make his voice sound natural. Anna seemed to reflect for a moment, looking at the ring on her finger, as if it could give her some answer. "No, not really. My mother never talked about old friendships or past loves. I think she liked to live in the present. Or maybe there were things she preferred to leave behind. I remember asking her once why she didn't talk about her past, and she told me that there were things that were better kept in the heart than in the memory." Carlos swallowed, feeling how each word Anna said echoed in his own memories. Clara had always been a woman of few words about her past life, and now he understood that she had chosen silence as a form of protection. But that didn't make it any easier to accept the uncertainty that was eating away at him. He wanted to believe that her love had been real, that the reason for her disappearance hadn't been a simple choice. "It's funny," Carlos murmured, not daring to look her in the eyes. "Sometimes I wonder if the silence of those we love is a way of protecting us or of distancing us. Maybe both." Anna stared at him in silence, as if she sensed that his words hid something deeper, though she couldn't quite figure out what. Carlos felt vulnerable, on the verge of confessing his suspicions, but Anna's inquisitive gaze made him pause. He knew he had to wait for the right moment, even if doubts consumed him. They parted with a friendly smile, but Carlos left with his soul full of questions. Should he continue searching for answers or learn to live with the mystery? During their visits to the bookstore, Anna had noticed Carlos's growing curiosity about her mother, Clara. At first, she thought it was simple interest or even nostalgia, but over time, she began to sense that there was something more. Carlos seemed to have a special connection to Clara's past, a connection she couldn't quite fathom. Determined to gain clarity, one afternoon she decided to show him something she kept very carefully. While Carlos was flipping through a book, Anna approached with a small smile, holding a photograph between her fingers. "I know you've been asking a lot about my mother lately," she said softly, handing him the photo. "This is the only thing I have of her, And from that time, Carlos took the photograph with trembling hands. As he turned it over and looked at the image, he felt time stand still. It was him, younger, hugging Clara on a sunny day that now seemed very far away. The intensity of the image overwhelmed him, as if that fragment of the past had suddenly materialized. Clara's smiling face looked up at him from the photo, and Carlos found himself staring at his old self in disbelief. Anna noticed his reaction and looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and surprise. She knew that this photo meant something important, although she didn't understand exactly what. "Do you recognize her?" Anna asked cautiously, as if the answer might reveal a secret she was also seeking. Carlos nodded slowly, unable to tear his eyes away from the image. He felt a pang of pain and joy at the same time, a mix of emotions that left him speechless. At last, there was confirmation, tangible proof that Clara had been a part of his life, his lost love. But along with that revelation, more questions arose. "Yes, I recognize her," he murmured, feeling his voice tremble. "This photo, Clara and I were very close many years ago." Anna watched Carlos in silence, trying to process what she had just heard. For a moment, a series of emotions crossed her face. Surprise, confusion, and finally a strange understanding. Knowing that the man in front of her had been so important to her mother gave her a new perspective on her own history. Now the scattered fragments of the past seemed to fit together, although not without leaving some wounds exposed. "So you were someone special to her?" Anna asked, her voice shaking slightly. Carlos nodded, his eyes still fixed on the photo. "She was the great love of my life, but one day, without explanation, she disappeared. I never knew why she left. Until now." Anna listened to each word attentively, as if she could discover something about the hidden side of her mother that she had never known. The idea that Carlos had been so important in Clara's life awakened in her a mixture of admiration and nostalgia. Perhaps by getting to know this man, she could also get to know better the mother she had lost. After a shared silence, Carlos returned the photo with a melancholic smile. "Thank you for showing me this. It means more than you can imagine." They looked at each other with a renewed connection, a bond that transcended time and the silence of kept secrets. After that encounter in the bookstore, Carlos knew that the time had come to reveal the truth to Anna. He could no longer bear the weight of his own silences, nor let the doubts continue between them. With his heart full of mixed emotions, he decided to invite her to have coffee somewhere nearby, where they could talk without the distractions of the bookstore. Sitting across from each other, Carlos took a sip of coffee, searching for the right words. Anna, perceptive, noticed the tension in his face and watched him silently, as if she knew something important was about to be said. "Anna, I want to be honest with you," Carlos began, his voice full of sincerity that he couldn't hide. "Your mother, Clara, she was someone very important to me. We met many years ago and, for a time, we were happy together. She was the great love of my life." Anna looked at him in wonder, a flicker of understanding lighting up her eyes. Though he hadn't expressed it openly, she sensed that Carlos and her mother shared a special bond, something deeper than she had imagined. But hearing those words, knowing that this man had been such a significant part of her mother's life, stirred something inside her. "Why didn't he ever tell me about you?" Anna asked quietly, as if asking the question would fill her with doubt. Carlos sighed, looking at her with a mixture of sadness and nostalgia. "I don't know. That's one of the mysteries that tormented me for years. One day, Clara simply disappeared. I never knew why she left or what made her make that decision. But now seeing you, I feel that maybe she was hiding something important that she didn't want to share with me." Anna absorbed each word, trying to understand the significance of this revelation in her life. Until now, she had had an image of her mother as a strong, if reserved, woman. Knowing that she had kept such a fundamental part of her past, silent awakened in her a mixture of bewilderment and sadness. "I always thought I knew my mother," he murmured, looking at his hands. "But it seems there are parts of her life she never shared with me. Maybe she was trying to protect me, or maybe she just didn't want to remember." Carlos nodded, understanding the conflict his words aroused in Anna. He had wanted to find answers, but now he realized that his search could also cause pain in the young woman. I'm sorry if this has affected you, Anna. I didn't mean to stir up painful memories. I just wanted you to know that, although I never understood her silence, Clara was everything to me. Anna looked into his eyes, sensing the honesty and depth of his words. Despite her confusion, something in her heart told her that, by meeting Carlos, she was discovering a part of herself that had, until now, remained hidden. The days after coffee with Carlos were intense for Anna. The revelation that he had been such an important part of her mother's life left her with a mixture of difficult emotions to process. On the one hand, she felt surprised and a little bewildered, as if her own story suddenly had chapters she didn't know about. On the other, she felt a strange peace in knowing that someone, besides her, loved her mother deeply and still carried that love in his heart. Finally, she decided to talk to Carlos again. She invited him to her small apartment, a modest but cozy space, decorated with details she had inherited from her mother. Carlos, upon entering, felt a warmth that reminded him of Clara. Everything in that place seemed to be impregnated with the essence of that woman he had loved and who, in a certain way, was still alive in Anna's life. Anna made tea, and the two of them sat in the living room, silent for a few moments. Finally, she took the initiative and spoke. I've been thinking a lot about what you told me about my mother. At first, it was a little hard to take in, but now I feel that, in some way, meeting you has allowed me to get to know another part of her as well. Carlos looked at her, feeling a genuine connection. He had been afraid that his revelation would push her away, but seeing that Anna was willing to accept his story filled him with relief. I've thought about all this a lot too, Carlos replied. Maybe Clara decided to keep quiet because she wanted to protect you. Maybe she thought it was better to leave the past where it was. Anna nodded, holding her cup of tea in her hands, searching her mind for memories of her mother. She knew that Clara had been a strong woman who had always done everything she could to protect her and give her a peaceful life, even if that meant leaving parts of herself in the past. She always told me that some things only made sense in the heart, not in the mind, Anna said with a slight smile. I think I understand a little better now what she meant. They exchanged a knowing look, as if they were connected by an invisible bond. Anna began to share some anecdotes about her mother, small and precious details that made her smile. Carlos listened attentively, knowing that, through these stories, he was reliving the love he had never forgotten. As the conversation progressed, Anna felt that Carlos had become someone special in her life. She didn't see him as a father figure, but rather as someone who understood her pain and the absence of her mother better than anyone else. Carlos, for his part, felt that meeting Anna gave him a new opportunity to close that chapter of his life in peace. As the days went by, Anna and Carlos continued to forge a bond that seemed to fill the voids they both carried in silence. Daily life began to feel less heavy for Carlos, as if Anna's company softened the loneliness he had carried for years. For Anna, on the other hand, Carlos had become a figure who, in some way, filled the void of not having known his own father. One day, while they were walking together in the park, Anna broke the silence with a proposal that Carlos did not expect. Would you like to do something together? She asked, looking at him with a smile. Carlos looked at her, surprised, and nodded, intrigued. Sure, what do you have in mind? Anna paused for a moment, thoughtful before answering. I thought we could do something in memory of my mother. Something small but meaningful. Maybe planting a tree or some other gesture that reminds us of her. Something we can take care of together. Carlos felt a warmth in his chest at the proposal. Not only was it a beautiful tribute to Clara, but also a way to build something new with Anna. The idea of sharing this symbolic act filled him with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Belonging and purpose. I think it's a great idea, Anna. I'd love to do it, he replied, excited. Shortly after, they both chose a small spot in a nearby park. They decided to plant a tree, one that would represent not only Clara's memory, but also the beginning of a new stage for both of them. As they dug the ground and placed the plant in its place, they felt that simple act bring them closer together. At the end, Carlos looked at Anna with a calm smile, feeling that the cycle of his pain was finally beginning to close. He had found in her not only Clara's daughter, but a friend, a companion in life. Thank you, Anna, for this and for everything, he said in a low voice, moved. Anna smiled back, feeling like she had found something valuable in him, something she had never imagined, a bond that transcended blood, but was as strong as love itself. That day they said goodbye, knowing that, although the past would continue to be part of their lives, they now shared a new beginning, a bond that they were both willing to care for and grow, just like that newly planted tree. One morning, Carlos decided to visit the bookstore one last time. As he entered, he felt a mix of nostalgia and gratitude. The bookstore had been the place where his life changed, where his past and present intertwined thanks to Anna. As he looked around the shelves, he saw Anna approaching with the same warm smile he now knew so well. "I thought of something," Carlos said softly, his eyes scanning the store. "Maybe we can create a special section in the bookstore in honor of your mother, with some of her favorite books and notes about her. Something to keep her memory alive here, where so many people come to find stories and memories." Anna looked at him, touched by the proposal. It seemed like a beautiful way to preserve her mother's legacy, to allow her story to live on in a place where others could find inspiration as well. Clara, though absent, had brought their lives together, and now they had the chance to share that love with others. "I would love to do that, Carlos," answered Anna, with a sparkle in her eyes. "My mother always said that books were her life companions. I think she would have liked to know that she will be remembered this way." They spent the afternoon organizing a small selection of books that Anna said would have been Clara's favorites. They added handwritten notes with phrases Clara used to say, and Anna was surprised at how much Clara remembered. In every detail, in every word, they felt Clara was present, like a gentle breeze surrounding them and giving them peace. When they finished, they looked at each other with satisfaction, feeling that they had accomplished something special, something that not only honored Clara, but also the bond they had formed. That little corner in the bookstore became a symbol, a space where they could both remember Clara and the love she had sown in their lives. Carlos looked at Anna with a calm smile, aware that time and distance had not managed to erase his love for Clara. And although he would never get all the answers he had sought, he understood that his legacy lived on in Anna and in everything they had built together. "Thank you, Anna, for giving me the opportunity to remember, to heal, and to move on," Carlos said sincerely. Anna took his hand and smiled at him, knowing that true love, like that between her mother and Carlos, never completely faded. In that moment, they both understood that, despite the unanswered questions, Clara's legacy had found its place in their lives, and that bond would unite them forever. As the days went by, Anna and Carlos continued to forge a bond that seemed to fill the voids they both carried in silence. Daily life began to feel less heavy for Carlos, as if Anna's company softened the loneliness he had carried for years. For Anna, on the other hand, Carlos had become a figure who, in some way, filled the void of not having known his own father. One day, while they were walking together in the park, Anna broke the silence with a proposal that Carlos did not expect. "Would you like to do something together?" she asked, looking at him with a smile. Carlos looked at her, surprised, and nodded, intrigued. "Sure, what do you have in mind?" Anna paused for a moment, thoughtful before answering. "I thought we could do something in memory of my mother. Something small but meaningful. Maybe planting a tree or some other gesture that reminds us of her. Something we can take care of together." Carlos felt a warmth in his chest at the proposal. Not only was it a beautiful tribute to Clara, but also a way to build something new with Anna. The idea of sharing this symbolic act filled him with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years: belonging and purpose. "I think it's a great idea, Anna." "I'd love to do it," he replied, excited. Shortly after, they both chose a small spot in a nearby park. They decided to plant a tree, one that would represent not only Clara's memory, but also the beginning of a new stage for both of them. As they dug the ground and placed the plant in its place, they felt that simple act bring them closer together. At the end, Carlos looked at Anna with a calm smile, feeling that the cycle of his pain was finally beginning to close. He had found in her not only Clara's daughter, but a friend, a companion in life. "Thank you, Anna, for this and for everything," he said in a low voice, moved. Anna smiled back, feeling like she had found something valuable in him, something she had never imagined, a bond that transcended blood, but was as strong as love itself. That day they said goodbye, knowing that, although the past would continue to be part of their lives, they now shared a new beginning, a bond that they were both willing to care for and grow, just like that newly planted tree. One morning, Carlos decided to visit the bookstore one last time. As he entered, he felt a mix of nostalgia and gratitude. The bookstore had been the place where his life changed, where his past and present intertwined thanks to Anna. As he looked around the shelves, he saw Anna approaching with the same warm smile he now knew so well. "I thought of something," Carlos said softly, his eyes scanning the store. "Maybe we can create a special section in the bookstore in honor of your mother, with some of her favorite books and notes about her. Something to keep her memory alive here, where so many people come to find stories and memories." Anna looked at him, touched by the proposal. It seemed like a beautiful way to preserve her mother's legacy, to allow her story to live on in a place where others could find inspiration as well. Clara, though absent, had brought their lives together, and now they had the chance to share that love with others. "I would love to do that, Carlos," answered Anna, with a sparkle in her eyes. "My mother always said that books were her life companions. I think she would have liked to know that she will be remembered this way." They spent the afternoon organizing a small selection of books that Anna said would have been Clara's favorites. They added handwritten notes with phrases Clara used to say, and Anna was surprised at how much Clara remembered. In every detail, in every word, they felt Clara was present, like a gentle breeze surrounding them and giving them peace. When they finished, they looked at each other with satisfaction, feeling that they had accomplished something special, something that not only honored Clara, but also the bond they had formed. That little corner in the bookstore became a symbol, a space where they could both remember Clara and the love she had sown in their lives. Carlos looked at Anna with a calm smile, aware that time and distance had not managed to erase his love for Clara. And although he would never get all the answers he had sought, he understood that his legacy lived on in Anna and in everything they had built together. "Thank you, Anna, for giving me the opportunity to remember, to heal, and to move on," Carlos said sincerely. Anna took his hand and smiled at him, knowing that true love, like that between her mother and Carlos, never completely faded. In that moment, they both understood that, despite the unanswered questions, Clara's legacy had found its place in their lives, and that bond would unite them forever. In the end, Carlos and Anna found a new purpose in their bond, proving that sometimes the answers we seek are not in the past, but in the bonds we form in the present. This story reminds us that although the wounds of the past may leave us with unanswered questions, healing comes from learning to accept and value the connections that fate provides us. How would you have faced a situation like that? Would you search for answers, or would you rather leave the past behind? Click on the video on the screen to continue this deep journey of self-discovery and discover more stories that teach us about the power of connections and acceptance. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content. See you in the